Yep.
Yep.
So if you want a seat in that, you gotta hurry. 'Cause, that's not very far away. If my math is correct, that's tomorrow. So
That's pretty
uh,
close.
yeah, we'll dive deep. It's an 8-week program, and if you want a seat in that, or even just to have a conversation to explore a seat in that, reach out to Nick or I and let's talk. You can follow us on YouTube, Wake Up with Giants TV. Hit the alert button, subscribe so you know when we go live every single dang time. And find us on Facebook, A Tribe of Giants. It's a great community of people that are currently on their journey and growing, supporting, and loving you on your journey, because there's usually a few bumps and bruises and learning sticky points along the way. So today we may have a bump or bruise or two. Nick's internet's being kind of funny, so if he cuts out, that's what's up. And then you get me and, and Kurt. We're gonna kick some butt when he's gone. He'll probably bounce right back, but if he doesn't, that's what's going on. So
Yeah.
I am so excited. Did I miss anything, Nick? I get all
No,
hyped up on my. I switched to a Celsius energy drink this morning, just a little
I think
different.
you did pretty good.
Oh, good. Well, that's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. It's a good start.
Yeah, I feel great. Thank you for that. Will
Yeah.
you introduce our guest today?
Yes. Building words of confidence, right?
Yes.
Every day.
Pat on the
Yeah.
back.
We're
Thank you.
we're honored to host Dr. Kurt Nelson, a pioneering force in the world of behavioral science with over 25 years of expertise in human motivation and behavior change. As the founder of the Lantern Group, he's transformed businesses by amplifying employee engagement. And as the co founder of the Behavioral Grooves podcast, he's illuminated the minds of countless listeners. With an MBA from the University of Iowa and a PhD in industrial organizational psychology from Capella University, Kurt has dedicated his life to understanding and steering positive human behavior. So join us as we uncover the magic behind his methods and journey. Welcome to the show, Kurt.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Ryan. Great to be here.
Did I do remotely close
Oh my,
to who you are?
I have to
Yeah.
just say, I was like going, I want to take that and write that for myself. That's the best intro I think I've had. Thank you.
Yeah, nice, man. I've learned how to use AI so I can make anybody look good, but I know you naturally look good.
Yeah,
I'm just
well,
trying to.
but I need an AI filter for and put some, make me look a little nicer. That's all I need. There
Yeah,
you
there
go.
you go. Right. I think you look bald is beautiful,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Look, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Run
From
right.
there.
gorgeous
Hey.
looking dudes with beards. I love it.
Well, we're going to do the best we can here with my Wi-Fi, and Ryan will take over where we have gaps. So, as we move forward, we strive in our community to really build people up, to help them see the power that they have, and then to be able to move that into their world to create lasting change. And our goal is not a quick fix program. We're not about trying to find things to band-aid the situation. But we like to go back into, we start with usually the non-conscious mind, who we think we are and how that was developed and how we've developed personalities and attitudes and traits and characteristics to be who we are today. And we operate from that so non-consciously that we think life is happening to us, but we're generating all of it.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, do you want to dive into your own history around this, or do you want to just share your knowledge around it? Like how do we become who we are?
Well, I think you bring up a lot of really good points. That the unconscious part, that part that we don't even realize is operating in our brain, controls a lot of what we do. And in behavioral science, famous researcher Danny Kahneman kind of labeled this system one and system two. There's lots of different ways that we can talk about this. That system one thinking is that automatic, responsive. We don't even realize that it's happening. System two is where your prefrontal cortex comes into play and you start actually thinking about things. And we always, when we think about thinking, we think we're in control, right? We have that rationalization after the fact. And when that happens, we can dismiss all of those other inputs that come into play, the subconscious things that we don't necessarily know. One of the things I always talk about is our brain is really good at fooling us, right? Our brain has a massive way of being able to look at the world and shape it, form it into what we want it to be or what we think it should be. And sometimes that is not reality. Actually, many times it's not reality. And I think that's really interesting. So, Nick, one thing, sorry, I'm going on and I won't be this long-winded on all of these, but one thing that you said is, that unconscious part of different pieces, and you brought in a lot of different facets of that. I think the other influences on us and who we are is oftentimes it's social, it's our community, it's the parents, and the expectations and the things that they taught us, how our community, our school, what they taught us. Again, keeping us either limited or kind of putting some brakes on some of those facets that we could maybe unleash if we would just allow ourselves to.
Yeah, I saw a post the other day about the hippocampus, and how the hippocampus is where memory is stored during the early years of life. We don't have a lot of memories around our younger years because that is developing as we go. And when you say, we have social influences, family influences, we have cultural influences, all social, right? As we're developing, these things are feeding into that development of the memory, right? That we
Hmm.
draw from.
Yeah. Yeah, so all of those are part of what forms kind of that core self when we think about our personality and various different pieces and the memories that we have. And this is really interesting. We just did an episode on our show about knowing thyself, and how do we actually know ourselves? How do we peel back all of the layers that we have in order to understand who we are at the core and not the person that the world is trying to make us be. And sometimes those are aligned. And not saying that isn't ever the case. Sometimes they are very much aligned, but oftentimes what we find is that people have a whole different, if they peel back the layers, they have a whole different perspective on what's going to make them happy, what is going to provide them subjective well-being, what they want to accomplish with their life. Too many times we hear the stories of people who went to be a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever, and realized that they hate this only because that was the expectation that was placed on them
Mm.
from their parents, their community, from when they were little. So I know Nick has just disappeared, but when he said the memories that we form, those are part of what forms who we are at our very core. And when we try to understand that, that's really important. And then Ryan, one thing just on memories, and this is the other aspect of that. Yeah, our memories are formed at those earliest stages and how we do that. But also when we look back on our memories, when we're actually remembering things, we like to think that's like a movie, and it's just this frame for frame of reality of what happened, when in fact what we're actually doing is we're recreating those memories every time. And so there's often glitches, like just like we're having here, right? There's
Right.
glitches in the memory. And so we're recreating it and we fill in, we don't remember all of the things, but we know how it's supposed to be, right? So if I'm remembering me going for a country drive when I was a kid, right? I don't remember all of that drive, but what I do then, what my brain does is I know we were going to my aunt's house or whatever that
Hmm.
would be, and I knew where that was, and I kind of know what the topography is there, but I don't remember that, but I fill it in my memory. That gets put in there because I go, oh, it's rolling countryside in Minnesota. I know what that looks like. And so there that is. And so memory is fungible from that perspective, and we all fill it in.
That's interesting because and Nick and I have talked about this stuff. Nick loves anything to do with the brain. Nick's in, so he's taught me a ton of stuff. I still don't know everything, but
Nobody does. So
couple things that came up for, like, as you were talking about, like, peeling back the onion layers first, was for a lot of people it's facing reality as like getting down to the nitty gritty. And there was a little bit of bubble guts that came up for me when you said, hey, we're going to peel back the onion layer. I think that there's a little bit of a fear of uncovering that But once you do, at least for me, and maybe you can talk about this in some of your experience with people, and but for me, once I started peeling that back and getting really down to it, it was actually incredibly freeing.
Yeah.
There was no more shadows. There was no more. There was. This is like baseline now. This is like homeostasis. This is just like reality of truth.
Yeah.
Is that what you find or see, or what?
So
Just because there's a lot of people out there that I think that they're like, oof, I don't,
yeah.
I'm not ready to dive down into the depths of myself.
Well, and you bring up a really good point, right? When you start peeling back those layers, you may not like who you see. And that's very scary. And so we have a natural kind of tendency to make sure that we hold ourselves in a positive light. That's one of the mechanisms that our brain does to kind of keep us, good and happy, and everything else is. I mean, there's really interesting research. You go into prisons and you talk to, even murderers, and you ask them, "Are you a good person?" And most of them will say, "Yes, I'm a good person. Circumstances got me here, or it was their fault, or whatever it is." But they have a positive self-image, and part of that is because there's blinders on. There's all of these things that our brain is doing because we don't like facing the ugly underbelly. We don't like to feel that gut, as you said, those butterflies in your gut, that angst that we get. But when you do, and it can be difficult, it can be really hard. And I just to lay this out, I am not a clinical psychologist, so I don't get people on the couch and kind of work with them on that. But the work that I do when we look at people and peeling back and trying to get to that core self is really important. And once you do that, as you said, it frees you. It allows you to face the world from this unvarnished, this unfiltered perspective, which allows you to be real and ultimately gain the happiness that I think we're all striving for.
Here's something that I thought was pretty interesting, and I think that that's an important like part. Um, if you've never done that, get around somebody that can hold space for you as that's going on. Um, uh, because it can be a heavy process, so you want to make sure that you trust somebody, and as you're doing
Oh,
that.
yes.
But I also was pretty intrigued and excited about the second part of what you were talking about, which was there's glitches. There's some glitches in the matrix. There's some made up stuff, right? That your brain has filled in these gaps, and for all these years, for me, I'm 42 years old, so there's a few glitches in there. I'd like to think that I have a perfect memory,
Yeah.
but I heard some undertones in there, and what I loved about it was that you are constantly making up, like filling in the gaps. There is a core. It's like a Bob Ross painting. You filled in the happy little tree and the accidents and all the other stuff that were happening along the way. Um, and I just booted Nick on accident. Okay, there we go. Nick's back.
There we go.
I
I'm gonna
I
try this another way.
kicked him off. But
Yeah.
so you as a your brain is naturally filling in all this stuff. You might have had the mountain and the lake, at least the baseline of it, and it looks okay. I've got the bones.
Yeah.
And we gone in and filled it in how we remember it or want to remember it.
Yeah.
But that's also like this amazing biohack. I don't know what to call it. It's the game genie. This is a cheat code. Is you can also put it however you create your story however you want. So if you had maybe I'm wrong. This is kind of how I'm looking at this, and I don't know if this is where it's going.
Okay.
I'm leading the witness a little bit. Can you create a new story from one that has been traumatic and that has been whatever
Mm.
it's been, and start living off of a new truth? I don't know if it's exactly true, and shape your life, or is that recommended? What are your thoughts on that? Does that make
Yeah.
sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it does make sense. And first off, I just have to compliment you, bringing Bob Ross in on the painting and brilliant, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, But with that, I think one of the things that you're talking about is can we redo our memories to make them better for us moving forward? And I
Right.
think there is the possibility for that. There's lots of research that shows that we can implant memories, we can do lots of things, but to a certain degree, that's not truth. And I think at some point there's an element of our brain that understands that. And so if we're trying to create a Pollyanna worldview of our history, of our background, and saying, oh yeah, all of those negative traumatic things that I had weren't didn't happen, or they weren't, the trauma that I thought they were. I don't know if that's positive. And again, I'm
Hmm.
not a clinical psychologist. However, I do know that what we can do is we can frame those different. So we can think about them differently. And by thinking about those experiences differently, we can take the power that they have away from them. And so for instance, and I will this is a probably many people have heard this, but there's really interesting research on this idea that how I approach something actually changes my body's response. So, for instance, if you're really scared about giving a public presentation, getting up and speaking in front of people, there has been research, and we interviewed a person in his book said, it's the equivalent of facing down a lion for some people. That's how scared they get when they're going and doing public speaking. And with that, our body
They'd
responds.
rather die
Yeah,
than
they'd rather die than
yeah.
have to go up and do that, right? And our body responds in a certain way. Our breathing gets shallower, right? Where our heartbeat, increases. We actually have cortisol released, which allows additional energy to go in, so we feel hyped and jacked and different pieces, and there can even be sweat on our palms and various different things. And if you view that, it's a reinforcing loop. If you view that as a sign of how nervous you are and how scared you are and all of those factors, it can be debilitating, right? It can take you down that negative spiral. But what's interesting is that's the exact same response that we have when we're excited. I mean, our
Hmm.
body response. Breathing gets shallower, heart rate increases. Think about, like, you haven't seen your loved one in a long time and you see him at the airport. What happens? You get it anticipating that. Or you're like hyping yourself up for a big sports event, and you're like, what happens in the locker room as you're getting there? All of those same things happen. And so you can reframe how your body is responding to that.
Hmm.
And by doing that, they've had significant impact on people in public speaking. This is actually one of the ways they coach people to overcome public speaking, but you can use it on a whole bunch of other things. And so finally, getting back to your memory component, right? When we think about those memories that we may not necessarily look at with positivity, or we have some negative aspects of them, what we can do is we can reframe those. We can say, look how that has shaped my life, and look at what I've done as a result of that. Or you can look at, if that wouldn't have happened, maybe I wouldn't have done these other things in my life. And again, as we said, that can be very freeing. We can take that and reframe. We're not changing the memory, although to your point, we can, and we probably do over time. It's one of the reasons why, as you are thinking about maybe a traumatic experience that you had, for most people, that pain subsides over time. And part of the reason is that our memory shifts over time when we think about it. And so we
Hmm.
kind of we diminish it a little bit every time, and that's probably a good thing. So
Yeah.
long-winded answer on that, Ryan. I apologize.
No, I like long-winded because my nervous system is going a little bit more than normal, because usually Nick takes more of the lead, right? This is great, living example of this. I was like, my breathing is getting more shallow, my heart is beating a little faster than normal, but I just
So
went back into my training a little
yeah,
bit, right?
there you go. Breathing, right?
Yeah,
There you go.
I'm
That's
okay. It's
exactly
all
it.
right.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'll be all right.
Couple deep breaths,
That's right.
what
See?
I love is, like, we can do that. We can do some hacks. We can take those deep breaths, and the long exhales, which actually slows our heart down. So by slowing our heart down, our brain goes, oh, well, we must not be nervous. So there, and it's all this kind of, it's the feedback loops that you get. So
Right? And excitement is the same as that
yeah.
nervousness. So just reframing that. So
Well, if
I,
Nick's gone, why don't we just talk about Nick? What can
yeah,
we
right.
what can
That's
we
what
talk about Nick?
that's
And
what we
yeah, he
do it.
doesn't.
We usually do it to his face.
Well, there
No,
we go.
he loves he nerds. He calls it nerding out. We call it Nick knowledge, because he too has a degree in industrial psychology, and he loves the way that the human brain works. And so this is like, I know that this is killing him not being here at the current moment
Oh,
because he loves this stuff. For me, my personality, like I'm not typically that, right? But I
yeah.
have learned by being around Nick, who's very much like you, Kurt. Is it and is it okay if I just call you Kurt
Oh,
versus,
perfect. No,
because
yeah.
I
Please
feel
don't
like
call me anything else. So
I'm
yeah.
missing the doctor title and not being respectful, but
No, the only
um,
people that call me doctor are my friends, and I make them do that because I just want to rub it
it's
in their
doctor
faces.
to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but other than
Uh,
that,
that's
that's only
hilarious.
a few friends that I don't really like. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. See, of course.
Well, I hope they're not listening. Now they'll realize that.
We'll make Nick call you doctor. Like, no, it's doctor. You say doctor. uh, well, so okay. So something else that I thought of too, as that was going along, is that you have it's the best practice.
Yep.
If you could do nothing, making up a new story could help you for a little while
Hmm.
until it doesn't.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times there's like an awakening or a crash or another major thing that brings all that stuff, like a tsunami coming all back. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah. That I think you nailed that absolutely right. That is perfect.
I mean, it happened to me, so that's all I could really speak about it. And I've
Yeah.
seen it, let's say, as I've coached people, as I've talked to people, they've masked it, they've hit it with um, alcohol or drugs, or and those are very heavy things.
Yeah.
But they do it too with time wasters. They'll
No.
do it with TV, movies, video games, whatever it is, to kind of hide that away, and then they won't go back to it. Hey, look, we might have Nicholas T. Smith is back.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm here with Dr. Kurt.
we were just talking about you, Nick. No worries.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Now we'll
Well,
just talk about you to your face.
I still don't have audio. So
Oh,
guys, I
well,
may have to miss this show.
well, he's all right. You could participate from the
Thank
sidelines, but
you.
we just want you to know that we love you. So
Yeah. I'll go participate in the comments here. Okay.
Okay. Sounds
Thank-
good.
perfect.
All
Well,
right.
okay. So my thoughts were to, like, you have this story, you have who you've been for all of these years, and
Yeah.
for me, it was about almost 40 years of my life. Now, obviously, I don't remember when I was a baby, but that plays into the whole thing. I
It
can
does.
remember back to a certain point, and now that I know that a lot of it was made up, um, my way of creating it was my operating system up to that point, and I imagine, just because this is how it was for me, that this is probably how it was as for most people. I'm hoping that I'm not a one-off. That when kind of your formative years of how you view the world, probably 5 to 10 years old ish, and you can, that's how you start seeing the world, and then you create an operating system that leads you for however long it goes until you become aware. Is that
S-
accurate?
So even before that, Ryan, so there's a whole line of theory, Walter Mischel, and some others, gonna forget their names, did this whole research on attachment theory. And
Hmm.
so even as a baby, what you're doing is you're learning about the world from the interactions that you have. And so what they have identified is that babies who are held and loved and feel safe and secure, uh, form a positive attachment theory. That, in other words, that the world is a safe place. That this mind map of what their developing brain that is still has millions and billions of connections, that actually is more connections than we have right now. It actually gets pruned down, but that pruning then happens, that this world is safe, that this world is a positive place. And if you don't have that, if you have a detached parent, or you're not feeling like you're safe, if you're left, crying in your crib for way too long, not saying like, so parents, don't worry, you can let your kid cry for a little bit, but just make sure it's not a repeatable thing that they're crying all night. That then you form this, you don't have a positive attachment. And with that lack of positive attachment, you start to view the world as, oh, I have to claim it, I have to grab it. And so even before you get to that younger stage, but as you said, that 4 or 5 years old, once you start being able to form your memories or keep your memories from that time, right? Most of us don't have really good memories from before 3 or 4 years old. Um, and those formative years, up through like when you start to get into adolescence, where you start pushing back,
Mm,
those are really key. And if there are pieces, as you said, that like you've pushed down, you've hidden, you've tried to reshape somehow, and there is a trigger of some such that then like breaks down that facade that you have built up for so long, that can be devastating. That can just all of a sudden, it's like all of that, the pieces that you've been pushing down, keeping back, kind of building a wall around, in your brain, and that wall falls down, and that can be very debilitating. And all of a sudden, you're stuck. And so, um, again, I know, even there's big ones, like you said, where people mask it in a number of different ways, but there's even small ones. And so sometimes those are limiting impacts. So I know you guys talk about, not being small and being giants, and building that. And oftentimes, and I see this more, and I, not to be, a kind of non mm, I'm trying to even think of the word. I see it often more with women who have had this, um, kind of component built in, that they can't do the same things, that they need to be protected, that they have this other piece. And so in work, oftentimes where most of my kind of focuses in on work, is that we see women who are, doing everything perfect, and they're like going, I can't apply for that next promotion because I don't have these other two things. Whereas men would be going, I have one piece down here that I think fits, and I'm going to apply even though I don't have these other nine, because I'm feeling that positive power. And so sometimes I think there are even those little limiters that we have, that those little walls that we build up in our brain, and we have to face them. We have to say, why do I hold this belief about myself? Why
mm.
do I have this limiting piece that is going to be there for me and not allow me to achieve the best life that I want? So
Yeah, I just had this image of like like a prize fight, like a Mike Tyson's type
yeah,
fight, and you're stepping in the ring with yourself. Like
it's
now,
like
now
Fight
in this
Club.
corner, Ryan the Lion Morris fighting Ryan the Lion Morris. It's like, ah, crap.
Yeah,
Just like my way, like you're gonna challenge all of your old beliefs,
yeah. And
and that
sometimes
that that can be pretty big, pretty
it can be
daunting.
it can be pretty daunting. And again, sometimes, I think I love the metaphor of a fight, because sometimes it's those misconception beliefs that are really powerful and really there. Sometimes I think it's more like going out to dinner with some of those beliefs. It's like, you know what? Let's bury the
Let's
hatchet.
go.
We're gonna
Let's
just
let's
let's
go on a date, you and
yeah,
I. We're
let's
gonna
go
have
on
a
a
little chat.
yeah, let's have a nice dinner, have a
Yeah.
glass of wine. We're gonna talk this out, and you're gonna come to an agreement on this, right? And it's so there's that aspect of who we are, that if we can be honest with ourselves, and which is difficult, um, and if we can face it with kind of the intent that I'm doing this to to be a better person, to overcome that angst that we feel, that scaredness of doing that, I think we can do a lot with that. And so
Mm.
those are really positive pieces.
Yeah, and I think there's like the main big giant things you could look at, and the glaring issues that are facing you in your life, things that are holding you back, and for whatever reasons. But I loved how you talked about sometimes the little things,
Yeah.
because and they can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And if you can tackle some of those bigger things with somebody, that's amazing. But I think it's a I'm just kind of guessing here, but I would imagine this is probably a lifelong thing of
Mm.
of stuff will come up. You talked about triggers. I said, hey, this could be a giant tsunami,
Yeah.
all the way down to it's just a paying attention. Your heart starts beating
Yeah.
faster, and you're like, why is this coming up? Why am I nervous right now? Why am I scared? Why am I feeling these things? But the more that you can dive into it and dissect it and
Yeah.
peel back those onion layers, I would imagine that the it just adds more tools, more self-confidence, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a cognitive behavioral therapy, which you guys have probably
Mhm.
talked about at some point, which is really all about that. It is this idea of looking at what you're scared of, your fears, and approaching it as opposed to avoiding it and going to it and doing it safely, right? And particularly if it's a big one, right? Because as you said, it can release a tsunami. You don't want to release a tsunami, right? You want to be really focused in on making sure that you're safe in doing this. And so get a professional to help you out if you have those big ones. But just facing down those fears that we have are really important. And they are really key if we want to live our fullest life and become the best person that we can. Because those little things, as you said, one thing about the little things is that, one little thing in and of itself, probably not a big deal. Two, three, even then, not a very big deal, right?
Right.
But all of a sudden, it starts to compound. It's like compounding interest. And so you keep adding little things, and those little things add their own little things on it. And all of a sudden, those little things can get really large. And, it's like, all right, I put $100 in the bank, and if it compounds at 2%, well, I get 102 the next year. But if it compounds at 10%, 110. And then the more that I have and the different, pieces of that. So you have to be really careful because we're too often, and I talk about this a lot from behavior, the idea of behavior and the little behaviors that we do. It's the going down in the afternoon. I work out of my house, and usually 3 or 4, I get bored or I have a break and I feel a little bit hungry, and I go down to my cabinet, and if there are Oreo cookies there, what do I gravitate to? I gravitate to those Oreo cookies. And any one day,
Naturally.
any one day, having 3 or 4 Oreo cookies, not a bad thing. If I do that every single day, not the best for my health, not the best for my waistline, anything along those lines. So that's kind of the things I think that we're talking about.
Yeah. I did one other thing, and I hate to keep like going back to, but I think this is foundational stuff. Like
Okay.
this stuff can absolutely change like everything you're talking about. I say foundational. You've built a foundation, like, and I'm talking to the viewer or me, it's like you've built this foundation that you thought was the way, and all these things, and it's that I call it an operating system,
Yep.
and it works until it doesn't, and sometimes it can be that big giant trigger. But I never really thought about. Well, I lied. I've thought about it. I got made aware. One point I was talking about some traumas and some abandonment issues because
Mm-hmm.
I was adopted
Mm-hmm.
at, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. Uh, what is that? First grade, second grade, first
Yeah.
grade. I was told. I told people essentially that I was adopted, and trying to be different, unique in the class. I was left-handed and
Okay.
adopted, which made me super unique because there was a few people that were left-handed, but there was nobody else that was adopted, and so I spoke up and said I was adopted, and then kids would ask me, a bunch of questions about, oh, I thought, you look like your mom and your dad. And I'm like, oh, sorry to let you down, but nah, I don't. And then they would say sometimes, well, did they not love you? Were you in an accident? Things like that, right? Now, they're kids. I mean, there's young kids too. Like these were kids just not understanding, but they're putting it into the best like process that they could think of. Is that, oh, were you not loved? Were you, like it's normal, I would imagine, to think like that as a young kid. As I got a little older, there were some bullies that were like, you're an accident, right?
Yeah.
And then you start to question, are you? Am I? Uh, and I started, and I talked to a gal, and she's a coach,
Hmm.
and she said to me, like, I was discounting, like, I didn't remember as a baby. I said
Yeah.
something along those lines. I don't remember what it was like before 7 or 8 years old. I have a few memories of things, and mostly sights, smells, sounds that kind of bring it back. Um, but I don't remember what it was like when I was a baby and like being born and that type of stuff. She's like, "Well, could you imagine, like, think about the trauma like in nature when a baby is taken away from its mother." And this wasn't my parents that were like, my parents didn't go in and snatch me away from my birth mom, like,
Right.
not even close. She wanted to give me a better life, but nonetheless, all of a sudden as a baby, not being connected with your mom that you've been connected with for 9 months,
Yep.
that's traumatic.
Yeah.
First of all, being born is probably a little traumatic in the first place. It's like, well, I'm cozy, comfy, and also just, you know,
I
I'm
think a little
cold, and
more
yeah,
than just a little
yeah.
traumatic. I
It's
think
a
that
hair,
may be one of
yeah,
those reasons why we don't have any of those memories,
right.
'cause that
That's
would
probably
screw
for
us
the
all
better
up.
that we don't remember that stuff because that is fairly traumatic. But then being separated.
Yeah.
And now that very new young brain is like, I don't feel safe. Feel like I've been abandoned, neglected. You know, I created this operating system of keeping people around me so that if anybody ever abandoned me, that I would have thousands and thousands of friends. I learned to be
Yeah.
funny. I learned to be engaging. I learned uh, all of these behaviors, which are good things to be.
Yeah.
I also learned like you could act out and in class and you get attention, which is what I was really seeking, like safety and love
Yeah.
and some different things. But I liked how you talked about um, you know those years before you really remember,
Yeah.
because they're not any less traumatic than the other years.
And to your point, you talked about this as you think about this as your operating system, right? And so with operating systems, you have software that gets put into it, and so you have these soft the software that's being programmed, and some of it is more of that baseline coding that kind of is there, and maybe even some of the operating system is being developed before that. But when you talked about like those kids, again, well-meaning kids that are asking you those questions, and that all goes into part of that programming, and so you might not think about it that way, but it's impacting you, and saying and putting those maybe sometimes implanting those thoughts, or at least taking the thoughts that you already had and reinforcing them that could have come from that. And so again, going back and looking at that, I think is very important to understand. And you've obviously done a really good job of being able to look at that. And you've what I loved about what you just said too, Ryan, is the way that you were able to see how your behavior, how the acting out, the being funny, the all those friends uh have some positive aspects, but they were a surrogate for that attachment, for that bonding, that love that you wanted. This is the way that I think I can get these.
Mm,
And by realizing that, not saying that you don't still want to maintain those, but you also realize they are a surrogate. They're not necessarily the real thing, and so you have to work at that and be able to allow that to happen in your life. And that's where as we talked about, as you said at the very beginning, when you felt like, oh, peel back onions, well, that can be very scary because we don't necessarily want to think like that. We don't want to have to realize, oh crap, I really am striving for love. I'm really striving for different things. We interviewed Ari Krulinski, who's a famous psychologist, sociologist, and he talked about, and he's writing a new book, and hopefully we'll get to interview him. He said, but one of the most fundamental human drive motivation is for significance. That this is that if you peel back the onion far enough, significance is at the center, and that we're all looking to feel like we matter, that we make a difference at some level. It's not necessarily being a Gandhi or, a Martin Luther King or whoever that would be, but at some level that we are making a difference in the world. And again, I need to look into the research on this a little bit more. I mean, my world on motivation and engagement is like, we have multitude of foundational motivations, but I think there's some kernel of truth there. And, that also comes with some of this, the pieces of what you talked about from love and different things that is significant, right? When we feel love, that's a significance component that we're giving out there. So I love that component that you talked about as we're going through there. So.
The whole topic of the show is the science of motivation.
Yeah.
When we went a little long in that, but in the foundational side, right? And this, obviously you've done a lot and you understand this. But is that about right? Is that right? Leading up into this, that's very foundational and we almost have to go backwards to go forward.
Yeah, I think to really be true, right? I mean, we can all find there's when we think about motivation, the way that us psychologists think about it is we look at it as intrinsic, coming from within, that we are motivated by the act itself, or extrinsic, that there is some external thing that we are striving for to get in order to be motivated. So again, we think about work and you go, all right, I love writing. And so I'm a copywriter and I love doing that, but maybe I don't necessarily love what I have to write about. And I'm doing that, I for my job, I need to be paid and I need to do that. And I have an external, I want to do a good job to get that reward, the report card as a kid, the little bonus of whatever it is, or, I want to have, my wife appreciate me and do stuff for her. So I'm going to wash the dishes today because I know that she'll be thankful for that, and might get a kiss tonight. So there you go. Yeah, but I mean, those are the ways that we think about it. So to your point of going back, I think what going back really helps us understand is what are those underlying drives for us, because each of us is different in our motivational profile. And this is the hard part about motivation, particularly as I work with organizations and they're going, well, how do we motivate everybody? And go, well, everybody's a little bit different. And so we have to create something that is broad enough and wide enough that, it can
historically too, corporations or large companies, and most companies are not real great at the motivational side it's because of that though too. It's because everybody is so different. They're just like, I don't know. So
everybody's so different.
Just it's do what I say.
Yeah. Well, everybody's so different, and the levers they have are like fear and punishment, or cash. How much can I pay you? And so you have two levers.
To cash, Well, sometimes I do that with my kids. It's fear or cash. What do you want here?
But I mean, when we think about that, if you have two levers, right, those are the two that you pull, you're missing out on all the other facets of going on with that. But I think too, the big piece that you talked about there is this idea of, all right, so when you go back, it's like understanding who you are and what motivates you. And so if we can really get down to that core, then when we are looking at the goals that we set, when we're looking at the types of activities that we are going to do or the types of interactions that we are going to take, we are going to be more aligned with that core value set of who we are. And when we do that, we know that you are more engaged, you are more motivated. So
So if
the
you're aware, it comes back to awareness and now what motivates me? These things. So then when you see them, or you start to go, okay, well, how do I get my goal or whatever I'm trying to accomplish? You can lean back on those things. Is that what I'm hearing?
yeah, yeah, we talk.
Is there like categories too? Sorry to cut you off. You hold the thought. Is there also like a maybe general categories that most people fall into? Does that make sense? Or am I trying to put people in boxes? I know that everybody is different, but there's some categories or some generals of, hey, most people are this
Yeah,
or
I mean,
certain types are
there's
this.
lots of research though on that part. There's lots of research, and depending upon which motivational theory you fall kind of like lean into, you can have different categories. There's drive theories that talk about, you know, I mean, the biggest of those is Maslow's hierarchy, which, by the
Mhm.
way, was never a triangle. Maslow never did that. There's all sorts of different things and lots of issues with how it's been interpreted. But you know, you have different people falling into, hey, I'm much more of a self-actualizer than I am of these different pieces and different elements. If you go, one of the motivational theories I like is called the 4 drive model. It's developed by Nitin Noria and Paul Lawrence. They were both at Harvard, and you know, that's like acquire and achieve, bond and belong, challenge and comprehend, and define and defend are the 4 main underlying drives, and people have different mixes of those individually. Now, the hard part about motivation, in that and kind of putting people into buckets, is that motivation, unlike personality, can change on a snap, right? So if I look at the 4 drive model, there's the first one, acquire and achieve. We're motivated by acquiring things and resources and all of those aspects, right? If I have a spouse and we're doing really well, and my spouse has a really good job, that may not be very high because we're that's satisfied at
Yeah,
this point,
money
right?
might not be your main motivator until it is.
Until my spouse
Like,
gets,
yeah, it's like,
laid
"Oh,
off, and now all of a
okay,
sudden
now I'm here for money."
it's like, crap, I got to pay the bills. I got, we're going to lose the house. We're going to,
The
I
the
can't pay the
social
mortgage.
aspect isn't as fun anymore. It's I need to I get that.
Exactly. So that's where it's difficult in this, when you think about how to, how to, put people in buckets. So, yeah.
I think that's a natural thing as we want like, I mean, I just did it.
Yep.
That's why I asked is because like, then you can manage the majority, but then also, in my mind, you can also see, okay, well, not everybody fits in this, but we could like, as a corporation, a company,
Yeah.
or as a leader,
Yeah.
I can look at, okay, I can help the majority with these things, and
Yep.
then pay attention to, okay, the not I don't want to call them the one-offs either, but okay, this is his motivator, this is her motivator. These are the things I can do to
Yeah.
help that person or even do myself. I like
Yeah.
that's why I'm super curious about this stuff because
Well,
I
so,
want to know what more of my motivators are, and I
uh,
probably I'm super bipolar in a lot of ways where I'll just flip on a dime and like 1 second I'm this and then the next second I'm that. So
well,
I get that.
one of the interesting things that you talked about there, Ryan, is, organizations. And so organizations as a whole, it's really hard. As a manager, so if I have a team of 8 to 10 people that report up to me, then it gets a little easier because we can start to, pull into, um, our kind of worldview. I can start to, if I work with you on a regular basis, I can kind of start to understand you. I can be better at understanding what is going to motivate or engage you as we think about
Mm.
that. And so
So
that's a lot of the
relationships,
work.
like
A
actually
lot of the a
like
lot of the
getting out
work.
of the office and like talking to in a
Yes.
company would
Yeah.
be talking to the people that are with you and getting to know them because then you'll know where they're at always or
Yeah.
most of
And
the times or if something's
yeah.
off, you're like, hey, what's up, man? Or like,
Well, and
How
it's
are
not
you?
an
What's going on?
it's not an exact science. I mean, there we hide from ourselves and we hide from others as well, right? We you know that, we
Sure.
know that, but you get a general sense, and I think that that is one of those pieces that is um, really important, and so it's a lot of the coaching we do. I want to go back. There was a piece that
Please.
you were talking about when it was like again getting to that core self and
Hmm.
talking about understanding it for yourself. And so one of the things that we talk about, and we have a journal that we produce called Brain Shift that helps people for 13 weeks go through and kind of identify their goals. And we have a module called Goal Shift. So helping that. And with that, we go through a really quick process of peeling back some of those layers. But what we take from that is this aspect of what we call keystone goals. And so if you understand who your core person is, and then take some time, and this is always, again, we talked at the very beginning of this idea of we have the unconscious mind and we have the conscious mind. And so this is really engaging the conscious mind in thinking, all right, so if I look out over the next quarter, the next year, the next 5 years, where do I want my life to go? And we're not really good predictors of that. So that's A, but know that. But if we can align that with our core values, we're much better off. And if we can set what we call keystone goals, so those goals that are going to align with those core values, that are going to drive that success that we truly desire, not the success that's been implanted in us through culture, society, family, etc., or based on the neuroses that we have from when we were a kid, then if we can set a plan up to achieve those keystone goals, we're motivated to do that. We're engaged around those, and it leads to a better life. And that's really, I think, one of the key things that we can all do. We can all do that. Um, you know, you don't need a 13-week guided book to help you. You can just do it on your own.
Sure.
But that's one of the things that I think is really
But
key.
like, if you like, if you've especially if you've never done it,
Yeah.
well, I wouldn't leave it up to just like the winds of chance. Like I would find Dr. Kurt, and I would be like, hey, like put put the best odds in your favor, because if you would have known this stuff, you probably would have done it. And even when you do know this stuff, like I know a lot of this stuff, but it's not as formalized.
Yeah.
And I need this. Like this is something that it's like a guided meditation. You could
Yeah.
meditate by yourself, but if you've never done it by yourself, the chance of doing it and doing it well are probably a lot lower. It's not a failure or anything like that. It's, hey, you're doing it, but why not put the odds in your favor? Like I said, I feel like I don't know. That's from a movie or yeah,
The Hunger Games. May the
the
odds
Hunger
always
Games.
be
Yeah,
may the
yeah.
odds
Why
always be in
not?
your favor.
Yeah, may the odds always be in your favor. Get with Dr. Kirk because that will help you, and then you'll know at least for the most part. Now, like you said, you shift and things become different.
Yeah.
Motivators
Yeah.
based on a lot of different circumstances, how you're feeling at a particular time, or maybe it's second to second for a lot of us. But
Context
that'll at
matters.
least
Yeah.
give you a general view, and
Yeah.
it's going to increase those odds.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think you bring up a really good point. The other piece that you said that I thought was really interesting is you know these things, you know them, um, but sometimes it's hard. We forget.
Mm.
Other things take precedence, or
Life happens.
life
It's
happens. And so having a tool, having somebody there, having some, as you said, make those odds better,
mm,
that will continue. And that's where I see the value of our tool or anybody's tool that will help you continue on that road to having a gratitude practice, to understanding, to looking at your keystone goals, and then every week identifying what am I going to be doing this week in order to make sure that we're targeting to make those keystone goals a reality. And that, I think, is really important. And so those are really cool.
yeah. I This topic today. I know we got a little bit off topic, and went kind of down the rabbit hole of peeling back the onion and those things. But I think that it's needed so that people can see wherever people are in their journey currently, maybe you haven't had a tsunami yet,
Yeah.
and maybe you never will. And that, hey, great. That would be preferred,
Yeah.
like that would be
It would.
amazing. Yeah, I mean, but I think that doing this work, you'll never regret it.
No.
I haven't had anybody that I know of that's like peeled back the onion layer, even though it can feel difficult. If the it might be difficult because it's a perception of this is difficult. When you have somebody like Dr. Kurt that is helping you peel that back and reframing things and pulling back like your main motivators, oh my gosh, the freedom from that time forward that comes, the the empowerment of like, oh my gosh, like I remember like that moment for me, and it's still there, it's still
Yeah.
happening. Like it's like a constant morph and shift and creation that's going on. But the foundation as a whole, or I mean, it's as much as I remember, is much better, and as much as I've created or filled in gaps, I guess, is like everything from that point now moving forward is brighter.
Yeah.
It's easier. When a situation comes up for me, I can look down and I've built I like to think of like, I don't know if you're supposed to say bullets on the internet these days, but it's like putting another bullet in the belt buckle, the bullet holder,
Yeah.
or arrow in the quiver is probably
Yeah.
a better thing. And you can pull it out when that situation comes out, and you are empowered to handle that
Yeah.
even more, which keeps the motivation even higher.
It does. It does. And I love, actually, I do like that analogy, because one thing we also know is that as we get older, right, we tend to we tend to look at things through a different lens, because that we've and if we've done that purposefully, if we've done it intentionally, if we've looked at it, like you said, you've done the work and looking back and identifying those areas, and now you have a better your arrows are better. You have better
Mm,
you have straighter arrows. You may have a better
sure.
bow, whatever you want to call that. But as we know that when that happens, that we look at things that come up that can maybe kick us off of our path. It's like COVID, fantastic,
Mm,
example. It happened to the entire world. But we've gone through that now, and we've survived. Most of us have survived okay. Others, less so, and others might have even thrived through some of this. But we go, if that didn't knock us off our socks, all right, this I didn't get that promotion that I wanted to. I didn't I asked that girl out and she said no. Whatever those little roadblocks in our life that happen, we can go back and we have that arrow that says, I already conquered this other thing.
yeah.
I'll survive this. I will do this, and then there'll be another promotion, or there'll be another girl, or there will be something else, and I can move forward with my life and not ruminate on it, and not let
Mm.
that just tear me down into
Yeah,
this piece.
because that can be debilitating.
Oh,
It
exactly.
just stops you. And when my operating system worked until it didn't, once I did exactly what you were talking about, and maybe not exact because I didn't have that. I didn't
Yeah.
know as much, at that time. It took me a while to find the right people and get around a community of people and some that were very specific in helping me peel back that onion layer.
Yeah.
As I started to do it, I didn't have to go back and like dissect the entire onion again. It
No.
was little pieces here and there. And it was like, "Oh, hey, man, I'm not as sharp in that area as I thought I was. Okay, well, let's sharpen that up a little bit."
Yeah.
And as I did it, oh my gosh, life became so much clearer,
Yeah.
much easier to handle. It doesn't mean that there aren't hard moments. There
Right.
are. There's moments that take me out for a little bit, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's now I'm like, "Okay, reach back into that quiver, grab some arrows." If I'm like, "Oh, there's not an arrow for that one."
Yeah.
Well, well, then now I know what to do too, and that's go find the people that can help me get an arrow, maybe even in the first place.
Yeah.
And it might be like a crooked arrow. Maybe it's a little broken arrow at that
Yeah.
moment,
Well,
right?
maybe a better analogy might be a toolkit, right? We got this
Yeah.
toolbox and we're filling that toolbox up all the time.
I
And the
didn't want to
more
be
tools
that
that we have,
cliche, but yes, that's
yeah,
a
well,
toolbox.
it is
I like
it
to
is
use
a
weirder things like quivers that
it makes
nobody
more it's
uses
more
anymore.
memorable. It's more memorable. You'll remember that. Where did I hear that? Oh, that was that Giants TV thing.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
We gained some arrows for our quiver today, and added a lot of things for the toolbox. I feel like we barely even scratched the surface. I would love. I don't know if it's a possibility, and we can connect afterwards. But I'd love to keep the possibility there of doing something even more specific. We barely just opened it up. We didn't even get into your story. There's so much just in this that we just barely scratched the surface. And so if at some point you would come back and we could maybe do some sort of a panel, or dive deeper into some of this, I'd love to get with you
yeah.
again in the future. I think our viewers, I think there's so much need for this.
Yeah.
And there are a fair amount that are out there doing this type of work, but
Yeah.
not enough.
Yeah.
And COVID made it even worse. These
Yeah.
major life events, have kind
Throwing
of
people.
compounded.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you might have one of those.
As long as Nick is still off, that perfect.
Yeah,
That sounds
yeah.
great.
We don't
Yeah.
need. Yeah, this is just me and you. Mano y mano.
No, I
We-
would love to come back, and I would love to have Nick as part of this
I
as
think
well.
I think
So
that it would be even more engaging, and with Nick's knowledge and your knowledge combined, I can't think of a more perfect storm to help people. I'm gonna just, before I ask for your final thoughts, I want people to um, sit down in some quiet moments. If you feel like life is a little bit out of control, or things take away your true power, um, to sit and reflect for just a little bit. Don't get caught too much in the emotions, because that can take you out. But think about your life and where you're at currently, and if any of this is useful, which I think it is. I think it's very useful, and you'll see as you do the work how useful it really is. I led my whole life doing things a certain way because that's what I thought had to be done. And I was trying to live up to these expectations and trying to be this person so that nobody would leave me, and trying to be successful so that I would be worthy of love. You already are.
yeah.
The person, the giant right in here, is already worthy. You matter. You have so much potential. It's already there. It's a lot of times uncovering misconceptions through life. It's uncovering the judgments and the fears and the doubts and the shames and all the things that have been heaped upon us, and our way of sometimes it's our culture, it's the patterning that we've created and how our minds saw it. How amazing though that our bodies, our brains were trying to protect us and do the very freaking best that they could. And it works to a certain point, and then you just do a little shift, a little
Yeah.
bit of reprogramming, a little bit of updating. And that updating can make a massive world of difference. And there's amazing giants like Kurt that will take you by the hand and will help you, until you can do it for yourself. So, Kurt, is there anything else that's on your mind that you'd love to share with the viewers?
Ryan, I don't know how I can follow that up, because I think it was absolutely wonderful. This idea of unleashing the giant within, and as you said, we all have that giant. We all have that person who is worthy of love. You're already there. That it has is a significant making machine, that we are there within ourselves, and it's a matter of giving us permission, and looking and finding that giant, and then allowing that giant to come forward. So with that, I can't add to anything that you just said. Thank you.
Well, whatever message was supposed to come through, it did today. And Nick, I'm sorry you couldn't be here to enjoy this, but We'll get you on next time, brother. And I know he was frustrated with the internet and some things, but that happens sometimes. Life is going to come at you at whatever way it does, and sometimes those emotions come up.
Yeah.
And I text Nick and told him, hey, you don't need to feel frustrated. Just shift that feeling, shift that emotion to excitement, and that you get to sit back and watch. Um, and know that there's somebody here that has your back. And
Yeah.
even if it was Dr. Kurt on by himself, I know that this would be just amazing. If he had these back end controls, this show would be probably even better than what it was, and the better
No,
message
it
would have
would
come
not have been better by any means, but thank you.
through.
Thank you.
Oh, well, we started out as three bald, beautiful men, and now we're down to two. For you giants at home that are traveling your journey, uh, just search out Dr. Kurt again. You're doing the best that you can, and sometimes that's just got to be. That's okay.
Yeah.
And we love you. We appreciate you. Go out and make it a giant day. Dr. Kurt, stay on for just 1 second. I'm
Will
gonna
do.
attempt to hit the outro button, and just remember, you're right on time. You're exactly where you need to be, and we love you too. Thank you.